The purpose of tonight's episode is to see whether this new release, the latest and greatest from Buffalo Trace, is tater enough for you to sell your kidney to buy one. Welcome to this very special episode of Whiskey and SV. I'm your host Sam, and tonight we're going to be drinking the ultimate tater juice, the E.H. Taylor Barrel Proof Rye. Now, if you know anything about whiskey, you know that this is not an easy product to get. It came out a couple of weeks ago, and its current price on the secondary market is somewhere close to $1,000, which is completely ridiculous because the MSRP on this is supposed to be $77.99. As you know, Buffalo Trace products are usually priced reasonably, but you can never find them at a reasonable price. And the only reason I have this is because I have a good friend called Niraj who has offered for me to crack his newly acquired bottle and to review it. So thank you so much, Niraj. Really appreciate it. So why is this a special product? Well, it is the 13th in the sub-brand E.H. Taylor. I think the base one that everyone's probably has some familiarity with, as long as you're in the bourbon world, is the E.H. Taylor small batch bourbon, and that's a bottle in bond product. And a lot of the baseline products are bottle in bond. I think that one, the MSRP is like $44.99, and a lot of times you can get it for, let's say, worst case scenario, $80, right? And the rye equivalent of the bourbon is this rye, which is priced slightly higher. I think even the MSRP on this is $67.99, although secondary again is somewhere in the 150 plus range. And the interesting thing about this particular rye product is that it doesn't use the same rye mash bill as every other Buffalo Trace product. So Buffalo Trace is known to be widely popular because their mash bills are very friendly, let's say, to the American palate, meaning they have a lot of corn and sweetness. But for the rye, they've specifically decided to use a mash bill that doesn't have any corn in it, which is kind of rare for a Kentucky rye. This is rumored to be 65% rye and 35% malted barley. So it's pretty unique. Like a lot of MGP ryes have corn in them, or even if you look at the really high rye ones that are 95% rye and 5% malted barley, none of them has 35% malted barley. So it's interesting to think about what that might bring to it. And spoiler alert, it's definitely different than what corn would bring to a whiskey. So the purpose of tonight's episode is to see whether this new release, the latest and greatest from Buffalo Trace, is tater enough for you to sell your kidney to buy one. Of course, I'm kidding, but hopefully the prices on these will eventually come down and be more in the realistically, I think maybe the slightly higher than the bourbon. So in the barrel proof bourbon variant of this costs somewhere in the range of 300 to 350. So I would guess that in a few months when these are out, it would be more in the 350 to 400 range. So hopefully not much more than that, but who knows? I mean, it's Buffalo Trace and it's a limited product, so MSRP means nothing. So yeah, the products that Buffalo Trace has in this realm are obviously the Baby Saz, which is the $30-ish bottle I can buy readily, pretty readily available. And then they have two in the BTAC collection. There's Saz 18, which has the same mash bill as the Baby Saz. So if you take a Baby Saz and you age it yourself, maybe you can get somewhere close to that. And then there's Thomas H. Handley at THH, and that is known to be a very bourbon lover's rye, meaning that it's very, very sweet and candy driven, which comes from that corn component. Uh, Before we get to drinking, I wanted to point out one more thing actually about these. Uh, on the back label of these, it actually has this two distillery codes. It has DSP KY 113, which is Buffalo Trace, but it also on the old one has DSP KY 12, and DSP KY 12 I believe is Barton. So for some reason they have a unique mash bill, and they have another distillery Barton Distillery's code on here. And I don't know why that is. Apparently, Buffalo Trace has denied that this is Barton juice. They've said it is produced, aged, and bottled on the Buffalo Trace distillery, but it's a mystery as to why they have that DSPKY12 on here. Um, Interestingly, on the new product, that has been removed. So I wonder if they like mixed in the original product some Barton juice somehow, or they contracted a portion of it to Barton. I'm really not sure, but there must be some, ties or connections why they put that there. All right, all of that I guess doesn't matter. What we're trying to find out is how they taste. So let's get started with the taste. As usual, I'm just gonna nose them first and then taste them and provide some notes. But it doesn't make sense to do a blind here because these are really quite different in terms of like the ABV. So it'll be too obvious to do a blind. Okay, so straight away on this, the surprising thing for me, or I guess I was surprised before I knew that the mash bill doesn't have any corn and it just has malted barley, is that it has very floral and aromatic notes that I kind of get from some Scotch whiskies. But of course, the fruitiness is accompanied by a hint of mint that outs it as a rye whiskey. So that vegetal slight rye notes definitely put it firmly in the rye whiskey category. Yeah, very nice and pleasant nose. All right, we'll go to the barrel proof variant. Ooh, gotta be careful. This one is bottled at 126 proof or 63% ABV. So 13 percentage points more than the bottle in bond variant, which is obviously 50% ABV. It's very much the same profile, but just really amped up. Like, and I would have guessed like way more than just 13% more amped up, or well, I guess 13 percentage points or 26% amped up. It actually feels like a lot more amped up. It's just much more concentrated, and the flavors are, yeah, well, the aromas are much more in your face. Okay, we'll start by tasting the lighter variant first. That's very pleasant. It starts by this like mint extract kind of note that's been sweetened on the tongue. Lots of baking spices come out. And then when they die down, it goes back to like those sweet minty notes. And then kind of the sweet minty notes is what's kind of continues on. Not very long lasting. I think like already it's sort of done with the experience. But quite enjoyable. I think this would be something you would sip on if it was affordable and easy to find without really needing to think about it too much. Now, let's compare that to the barrel proof variant. Okay, again, just way more amped up. Ooh, yeah. You got to be careful with this one. It's the start of the experience specifically on this is much more astringent. It just feels like you have too much concentration of some sweet, and it starts tasting a little bit bitter. So if you ever had like any mint extract or any herbal extracts in general that have been sweetened, the sweetness is not what comes across first. At first, that medicinal herbal note, which is kind of bitter, makes your tongue sort of like retract, and you think, oh, this is going to be not a good feeling. But then it kind of like dissipates, and then the sweetness comes out, and the sort of more fruity and floral notes, and they're very enjoyable. And then what you get in, I guess, as a result of enduring that first astringency is a much more layered and lingering experience. It's still making my mouth water. It's very flavorful. Yeah. The other thing that's very noticeable in this is that there's much more oak presence. The oak in this is kind of lost. It's nowhere to be found. But this oak infused sweet mint sort of flavor is much more prominent here. Overall, I think if you're a proof ho, then there's no contest. This is by far the clear winner. However, is it worth basically 5 to 8 times the price? No, I think MSRP is probably underpricing it. If we're talking 67 versus 77, it's definitely an underpricing. I think this is at least 50% better, maybe even twice as good as this. Now I know from a production perspective, it's just adding like 26% more water to get this, but the reality is, it's just a lot more rare of a product, and I would be willing, honestly, to pay probably in the order of a little bit more than maybe a barrel proof just to have one in the collection. But the reality is, no whiskey, well, I shouldn't say no whiskey, but very few whiskeys, especially non-aged whatever whiskeys, are worth $800 to $1,200. That's just way too much money. So if you are interested to try this, I hope that you have a generous friend like me, or you can try it at a bar, or you can just wait and see if eventually they become available enough that you can get lucky at a store and they can get it somewhere between uh, secondary and MSRP. I think for sure these are never going to be available at MSRP openly. Like, never say never, but we can hope, but probably not. Based on what I've seen from the bourbon and whiskey world, there are always going to be a premium on these. So is it like on top of my top five or top whiskeys for the year or all time? No, it's not. It's I think this profile for me is fine. I do enjoy it. I like to have it in the library, but it's not something that I crave or I'm willing to overpay for. So yeah, your mileage may vary, but I hope either way you found that useful and interesting. And yeah, tune in for more cool content later. Actually, in a bonus after the credits roll, after my final whatever mini video, I'm actually going to compare it to You Probably Know What. If you're interested, keep watching and we'll do a tasting of that as well. Cheers. All right, so in the bonus contents, we're gonna compare this. I'm gonna let you guess what you think I'm gonna compare them with. Of course, the Jack Daniel's Twice Barrel Heritage Rye. This is my favorite rye whiskey of all time, and I don't think anything is ever gonna beat it, but we'll see. And my recent favorite, which is the short barrel rye. Now, I believe the short barrel rye is just MGP 95.5% rye, and it's a short barrel, meaning it's 50% or more angel share. So it's extremely concentrated flavors. This one is only at 50% ABV, so it'll be hard to compare it to the EHTR. I've actually poured these before and let them air out a little bit. I will start by the uh, short barrel. Okay, very candied nose. It's even though it's a 95.5 rye, I think it's a 95.5 rye at least. It's surprisingly sweet candy notes and yeah, very enticing. It has like this minty and herbal notes, but nothing too dilly or yeah. I would venture to say this is somewhat of a bourbon lover's rye. It also has this sort of like a charred wood sort of note to it. Okay, on the palate. Yeah, so the palate is much more rye. It's yeah, I think I'm not wrong about this being 95.5 rye because it's much more vegetal than the nose would have sort of let on, and yeah, there's obviously it's very enjoyable. It's like sweet candy notes as well, but the sweetness is not. I'm not sure. There's a very strong vegetal note on this. Quite spicy indeed. Very nice though. It's extremely flavorful. Okay, how about the Jack Daniel's Twice Barrel Heritage Rye? Oh my god, this has a this has a very unique vanilla mixed with sort of a charred oak that is just unmistakable. There's like slight nuttiness to it, like a peanut note that is sort of a very Jack Daniel signature. It's not at all like a Jim Beam peanut. It's very much its own unique sort of profile. Obviously, comparatively, this is much less proof, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't have the same viscosity and intensity. It doesn't attack your mouth with lots of like sort of mouth burning flavors, but the flavors that are there are very creamy, viscous, and just amazing. This has like a really great balance between those herbal notes, sweet notes, and the sort of charred oak aged in hot weather kind of notes. Yeah, I think for me, the undisputed champion is definitely the Jack Daniel's Twice Barrel Heritage Rye, and probably and I would say in second place, if you're taking value into account, then definitely the short barrel rye. But if you're not, then I guess this. I mean, at MSRP, this is amazing. I would definitely take it over the short barrel rye. But if you're taking price into account, then it makes it difficult to pick that. This is a solid rye whiskey. Um, Different profile. Not my favorite profile, but it's still very, very good. All right. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I hope to see you in future episodes. Cheers.